If you've ever watched your life go from normal to nuclear in less than a year, like someone swapped your marriage out for a crueler version while you were asleep, then you'll understand why I'm telling this like a confession. Because even now, I still catch myself reaching for the old reality. The one where I thought love meant steadiness. The one where I believed safe was a compliment. My name is Leilani Price. I'm 38, and until recently, I was married to Ethan Price, 37. We were together for 15 years, married for 12. We met in our early 20s at a chaotic house party, one of those cramped apartments with sticky floors and cheap beer, and someone always yelling over a speaker that was too loud. Ethan was leaning against the kitchen counter, telling a story about his ex-girlfriend like it was stand-up comedy, and everyone was laughing. I remember thinking he's magnetic. I was the opposite. I was the responsible one, the woman who brought a sweater because the night might get cold, the woman who always knew where her keys were. I worked as an accountant. Corporate tax, mid-size firm, bringing in about $87,000 a year. I've always been good at what I do. I like structure. I like clean numbers and clear outcomes. I'm the person who meal preps on Sundays, actually reads terms and conditions, and has a retirement account that's, well, not a disaster. Ethan worked in pharmaceutical sales, and he was great at it. Charismatic, sharp, always moving. With commissions, he made around $110,000. He was the person who could sell ice to someone standing in a snowstorm. In the beginning, he used to tease me in this affectionate way. "You're refreshingly stable," he'd say, like he was admiring a rare artifact. "After dating musicians and wannabe entrepreneurs, you're like a warm house." Back then, I smiled. I thought it meant I'm home to you. I didn't hear the other meaning, the one that would come back later and cut me open. The first decade of our marriage looked good. From the outside, we were that couple people used as proof that grown-up love existed. We bought a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs. We got a dog, Charlie, a goofy mutt who loved Ethan immediately and followed me like I was his second job. We didn't have kids. That part was always a debate in the family. Ethan's parents brought it up constantly, like they were taking attendance on our reproductive choices. "You'll regret it," his mother would say, eyes narrowed like she could see the future and didn't like what she saw. But Ethan and I, at least back then, were united. He said he wanted to focus on his career. I said I liked our life the way it was. Kids are expensive, kids are permanent, and neither of us felt that clock ticking loud enough to drown out our peace. Our routine was comfortable. I woke up at 6 a.m. I made breakfast for both of us. I packed lunches. I left for work. Ethan slept until 8, rolled out of bed like a man in a commercial, pulled on his suit, and breezed out the door with his travel mug and a smile. I came home around 5:30, cooked dinner, cleaned up, walked Charlie, handled laundry, paid bills, dealt with house maintenance, everything that keeps a life from collapsing. Ethan got home between 7 and 8, talked about his day while I kept his dinner warm, and we watched TV until bedtime. Weekends weren't much different. I mowed the lawn, grocery shopped, meal prepped, fixed whatever broke, scheduled appointments, made sure the mortgage got paid on time, the dog had his shots, the pantry wasn't empty. Ethan slept in, met friends for brunch, kept his social calendar packed. Sometimes he'd come home with stories and laughter, like he'd been out living while I'd been maintaining. I didn't complain. That's important, because the truth is, some part of me took pride in being the foundation. I liked order. I liked competence. I liked knowing our world wouldn't fall apart because I had my hands on the wheel. And Ethan, he always told people I was the best wife. He bragged about how Leilani handles everything at home so I can focus on crushing it at work. He'd say it with a grin, and his friends would nod like I was a trophy. I didn't realize I was also a convenience. Things started shifting about 3 years ago. Ethan's company hired a new regional sales director, a woman named Brianna Cross. Ethan told me about her over dinner like it was gossip. "She's intense," he said, cutting into his steak. "Total fitness freak. Drives this ridiculous sports car. She's always talking about optimization. Like life is a spreadsheet, and she's trying to max out the stats." I laughed at first, because who talks like that? But then he kept talking about her. Brianna posted constantly on social media. Gym selfies, motivational quotes about dominating life, videos of her doing extreme sports with captions like, "Weakness is a choice." Ethan said she had this rating system for people based on looks, income, and what she called discipline. She calls it value, Ethan told me, eyes bright, like dating market value. She says most people don't understand their own worth. I felt a small, cold ripple in my chest. Not jealousy, not fear. More like disgust disguised as curiosity. But Ethan said it like it was funny. She's wild, he added, but she means well. That was the first red flag. And I missed it. Because soon, Ethan started working closely with her on a big rollout. Lots of travel, late nights, team-building events that somehow required bars at 2 a.m. I wasn't thrilled, but I've never been controlling. I told myself a healthy marriage doesn't need surveillance. Ethan assured me Brianna was just a boss, a colleague, a mentor. And then, the changes started. Ethan began going to the gym at 5 a.m. In the 15 years I'd known him, Ethan had never been a morning person. Getting him out of bed before 8 was like negotiating with a sleepy bear. Suddenly, he was up before dawn, pounding protein shakes and doing HIIT workouts. He started meal prepping chicken and broccoli. He bought expensive workout clothes, supplements, a monthly subscription to an app called AlphaFit that cost nearly $90. When I asked about it, he smiled like I was behind. It's an investment, he said. Brianna says health is non-negotiable. Then the comments started. Leilani, don't you think you should hit the gym more? Leilani, when's the last time we did something exciting? Leilani, Brianna says people get comfortable because they settle into mediocrity. The first time he said the word mediocrity, my face burned. Are you calling me mediocre? I asked, trying to keep it light. Ethan shrugged. I'm just saying, we could level up. Level up. Like our marriage was a video game and I was the weak character holding him back. Our sex life started dying quietly. We went from a few times a week to once a month, if I initiated and if he didn't say he was tired. And when we did, Ethan felt distant, like he was somewhere else, like he was comparing the moment to something he'd been promised. Sometimes I'd wake up at night and hear him laughing softly on the phone. Not with me, with Brianna, talking about routines, goals, mindset. Meanwhile, Brianna started becoming a presence in our lives. Ethan invited her to a barbecue. She walked into our backyard like she owned it. Perfect posture, perfect hair. That smile people use when they want you to know they're smiling, but also measuring. She shook my hand a little too firmly and looked me up and down. Leilani, she said smoothly, Ethan's told me a lot about you. All good things, I hope, I said. She laughed. He says you keep his life stable. The way she said stable made it sound like a cage. Ethan just smiled. Brianna spent the night talking about her investments, her workouts, her philosophy. She gave Ethan unsolicited advice about career moves, networking, not wasting time on low-return relationships. Then she turned to me and said, a lot of women don't realize they're underpricing themselves. Underpricing, I asked. Relationships, she said casually. People settle because they don't understand their leverage. I laughed politely. Inside, something twisted, because I wasn't sure if she meant women or Ethan. After that night, Ethan started looking at me differently. Not like a partner, like a before photo. The moment that changed everything came about 18 months ago. We were eating pasta at the kitchen table. Charlie was asleep at my feet. I'd spent the afternoon cleaning. Ethan came home late, smelling like cologne and bar air. He cleared his throat. We need to talk about our relationship. My stomach tightened. I thought vacation, counseling. Instead, he said, I've been doing a lot of self-reflection, and I realized I settled when I married you. The fork slipped in my hand. The room went quiet in that unreal way, like sound had been vacuumed out. Excuse me, I said. Don't take it personally, he replied quickly. You're a good woman, stable, responsible, but you're not exciting. We'd been married 9 years, and he was talking like I was a bad investment. He went on about passion, risk, adventure, about how he felt like he was dying inside routine. Then he said it. Brianna's been really helpful, he added. She's been guiding me through understanding what I actually need in a partner. Guiding, like I was a lesson he'd outgrown. I swallowed hard. Are you asking for a divorce? No, he said fast. I love you. I just think we need changes. Changes, like a performance review. I needed to be more spontaneous, less focused on planning, more adventurous, more whatever Brianna said high value looked like. I went to bed that night with my chest aching. Because the worst part wasn't that he called me boring. The worst part was that he said it like a fact. And I didn't know it yet, but that dinner was only the beginning. Because the next thing he suggested, smiling like it was reasonable, was marriage counseling. With his therapist. And something inside me whispered, this isn't about fixing a marriage. This is about teaching you to accept being diminished. And soon I'd learn just how far Ethan was willing to go. To make me pay for the crime of being safe. Marriage counseling, it turns out, can feel a lot like an ambush when you're the only one who doesn't know the script. Ethan insisted we see Dr. Vanessa Loring, his therapist. He framed it like a compromise. She already understands my growth journey, he said carefully. It'll save time. That should have been my cue to run. Dr. Loring's office looked like a curated Pinterest board for self-discovery, crystals on floating shelves, an essential oil diffuser humming in the corner, abstract art that meant nothing but probably cost a fortune. A framed quote hung behind her chair. Your truth is valid. I remember staring at it thinking, so is mine, right? The sessions were subtle at first. Leilani, Dr. Loring said gently in our first appointment, Ethan feels like your relationship has become very operational. Operational. Like I was a process, not a person. She turned to him. Can you explain what you mean? Ethan leaned forward, hands clasped. He looked calm, practiced. I just feel like Leilani prioritizes safety over growth, he said. She's risk-averse. She plans everything. There's no fire anymore. I opened my mouth to respond, but Dr. Loring was already nodding. And Leilani, she said, how do you feel hearing that? I swallowed. I feel like I'm being blamed for being responsible. She smiled sympathetically. Responsibility can sometimes become a shield against vulnerability. A shield, like my stability was a flaw I was hiding behind. Every session followed the same pattern. Ethan talked about growth, potential, value. I talked about partnership, balance, building something together. And somehow every road led back to me needing to change. Have you considered pushing your comfort zone? Are you open to redefining what excitement looks like? Ethan needs a partner who challenges him. No one ever asked what I needed. Outside therapy, Ethan leaned harder into his new life. He trained obsessively, tracked macros, posted gym selfies. He stopped eating the dinners I cooked, said he'd already hit his protein targets. He stopped coming home straight after work. I'm grabbing drinks with Brianna and the team, he'd say casually, like it was normal for your boss to be your emotional confidant. And Brianna, she was everywhere. Her name came up constantly. Brianna says men stagnate when they're comfortable. Brianna thinks couples should reassess value every few years. Brianna believes high-value people don't apologize for wanting more. It was like she'd moved into our marriage without ever setting foot in our bedroom. I tried. God, I tried. I planned a surprise weekend trip, ziplining, rafting, the whole adventure package. Ethan complained about the hotel and said I'd booked the wrong season for optimal conditions. I joined a climbing gym. He scoffed. Indoor climbing isn't real risk. I suggested we take a cooking class together. He said that wasn't challenging enough. Nothing I did counted because none of it came from her. That's when the thought crept in. Is he cheating on me? The late nights, the secrecy, the way he smiled at his phone. I hated myself for thinking it. I hated the anxiety even more. So I hired a private investigator. It cost me $3,000, and it was the best money I ever spent. The PI, his name was Ron, was a former cop. Calm, efficient, no nonsense. He followed Ethan for 2 weeks. When he called me in for the report, my hands were shaking. No physical affair, he said immediately. They're not sleeping together. Relief hit first. Then, confusion. They meet constantly, Ron continued. Lunch, gym, drinks, long conversations in her car. She texts him all day. He slid a folder across the table. Screenshots. Messages. And that's when my stomach dropped. Brianna wasn't flirting. She was coaching. She's holding you back. You settled because you didn't know your worth. High-value men don't apologize for outgrowing low-return relationships. And Ethan? He agreed, over and over again. Sometimes I look at her and feel stuck. She's safe, but I feel like I'm wasting potential. I deserve more than comfort. Reading those messages felt like being peeled open. This wasn't an affair. It was worse. He'd replaced me emotionally. I wasn't his partner anymore. I was his infrastructure, the one who cooked, cleaned, and paid bills, held life together while he planned his escape. I showed the report to my sister. She didn't even finish reading before she said, Leilani, you're not his wife anymore. You're his service provider. That night, Ethan came home late again. He kissed my cheek distractedly and said, we need to talk soon about fairness. Fairness. The word echoed in my head. Because something told me, deep in my bones, that whatever Ethan thought was fair was going to cost me. And I had no idea yet just how cruel the price tag would be. Ethan chose a Tuesday night to detonate our marriage. Nothing dramatic about it. No shouting, no tears, just pasta cooling on the table and Charlie asleep at my feet, like the universe didn't realize what was about to happen. He came home later than usual, not drunk, just loose. That dangerous middle ground where people say exactly what they've been rehearsing in their heads. Leilani, he said, sitting across from me, we need to talk about what's fair. There it was again. Fairness. I folded my napkin slowly. Okay. He took out his phone. Not to text, not to scroll. To show me something. A spreadsheet. An actual spreadsheet. I've been doing some analysis, he said, like he was presenting at a quarterly review, about our relationship. My heart started pounding, but my face stayed still. Analysis, I repeated. He nodded. Brianna helped me build a relationship value model. Of course she did. We input metrics, he continued, tapping the screen. Income, physical fitness, social influence, ambition, growth trajectory. I stared at the rows and columns like they might rearrange themselves into a joke. And? I asked. And based on objective measures, Ethan said carefully, there's a significant imbalance. He turned the phone toward me. His score, 8.3. My score, 6.4. I felt something in me go quiet. Not anger. Not sadness. Just silence. You rated me, I said. We rated us, he corrected. This isn't personal. It's data. Data. Like love could be graphed. Ethan, I said slowly, what are you saying? He leaned back. I'm saying I made sacrifices when I married you. There it was. The lie he'd been polishing for years. I could have stayed with my ex-girlfriend Nicole, he continued casually. She's a dermatologist now. Makes triple what I do. Or Hannah, you remember her from my old office? She's a VP now. Instead, I chose stability. I looked at him. At the man I'd built a life around. And you're telling me this because... Because choices have opportunity costs, he said, and I've been carrying that cost alone. I waited. Some part of me knew. If I interrupted, I'd miss the full horror of it. So, Ethan said, exhaling, I think it's reasonable that you compensate me. My ears rang. Compensate you how? He didn't flinch. Hazard pay. I laughed. I couldn't stop it. It burst out of me, sharp and disbelieving. You're joking. I'm not, he said calmly. Tell him $200 a month. The number landed like a slap. For what? I asked. For the opportunity cost of being married to someone below my market value, he said. Brianna says in value mismatched relationships, the lower value partner should compensate the higher one. I stared at him, at the man who ate the food I cooked, slept in the house I managed, built his career on the stability I provided. You want me to pay you, I said slowly, for being married to me. When you phrase it like that, it sounds bad, he said. But logically... No, I interrupted. Say it again. He frowned. Leilani. Say it again, I said, my voice steady, because I want to hear it the way you mean it. He hesitated, then said, Yes, I think you should pay me monthly for the privilege of being married to someone of my value. That was the moment something inside me snapped cleanly in half. Not shattered. Not exploded. Just ended. I stood up. Brianna can go to hell, I said quietly. Ethan's face changed. This isn't about her. It's always about her, I replied. Do you even hear yourself anymore? He stood too. You're being emotional. I'm trying to have a rational conversation. You created a spreadsheet to justify contempt, I said. There's nothing rational about that. I don't want a divorce, he said quickly. I just want fairness. Fairness. The word sounded rotten now. I told him I needed time to think and slept in the guest room that night. He thought I was sulking. I was planning my exit. The next morning, I called my friend Dana, a divorce attorney. I didn't tell her everything, just enough. She went quiet, then said, Leilani, document everything. So I did. I recorded conversations, openly. Just for clarity, I'd say. Ethan didn't care. He thought he was right. I saved texts, emails, notes. I watched him get bolder. Don't forget the hazard payments due on the 1st, he said one morning, sipping his smoothie. Another week later, Brianna thinks $2,200 is actually low. We might need to renegotiate. I smiled and nodded. I became the perfect wife again. Meanwhile, I built my own spreadsheet. I tracked everything. Meals cooked, house cleaned, bills paid, appointments scheduled, yard work, pet care, emotional labor. I researched market rates, personal chef, housekeeper, financial manager, property maintenance. When I added it all up, my contribution came out to over $4,500 a month. 2 months later, I was ready. Ethan was getting dressed to go out with Brianna's crew when I walked into the bedroom. Can we talk about hazard pay? I asked lightly. His face lit up. Finally. I've thought about it, I said. You're right. He smiled. I knew you'd come around. But I calculated mine too, I continued, pulling out my phone. His smile faltered. What do you mean? I said calmly, based on domestic labor, financial management, and emotional endurance, you owe me $2,400 a month. His face went red. That's not how this works. Why not? I asked. If we're assigning value, let's do it honestly. He exploded, accused me of twisting things, being petty, missing the point. I listened. Then I said the words he never expected. I'm filing for divorce. He froze. You're overreacting. No, I said, I'm responding. That weekend, I moved out. And the war he thought he'd win had just begun. Divorce doesn't start with paperwork. It starts with a story. And Ethan immediately began telling his. To his parents, he was the devoted husband blindsided by an emotional overreaction. To our friends, I was having a midlife crisis. To anyone who would listen, I'd thrown away 15 years over one stupid conversation about money. He left out the spreadsheet. He left out the monthly payment schedule. He definitely left out the word hazard. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself loudly or publicly. I let the evidence speak. I stayed with my sister while I looked for an apartment. Charlie came with me. Ethan didn't even fight for the dog, which told me everything I needed to know. 3 weeks later, I filed. Ethan hired a shark of an attorney named Gregory Halloway, the kind of man with billboards, perfect hair, and a reputation for winning big. Dana just smiled when she saw his name. That means he's expensive, she said. Not necessarily smart. Their opening demands were aggressive. They wanted the house, half my retirement, spousal support from me, and compensation for emotional damage caused by my sudden abandonment. Dana nodded politely. Then she said, okay, let's talk about hazard pay. The room went quiet. Ethan looked confused. Gregory frowned. What hazard pay? Dana slid a folder across the table. Recordings, texts, screenshots, the spreadsheet. Ethan demanding monthly payments. Ethan setting due dates. Ethan increasing the amount. Ethan explicitly stating I should pay for the privilege of being married to him. Gregory's face drained of color. He asked for a recess. When they came back, the tone had changed. Suddenly, they were open to an equitable split. No spousal support. No emotional damages. Dana leaned back. My client is requesting spousal support, she said calmly. Gregory sputtered. On what grounds? My client makes more money. Dana didn't blink. For 12 years, Leilani Price managed the household. She performed the majority of domestic labor, financial planning, emotional support, and logistical coordination while Mr. Price focused on his career. She declined advancement opportunities that required travel. She supported his income growth directly. She slid over another document, and Mr. Price has repeatedly established, by his own words, that he considered this contribution lesser. He demanded compensation for remaining married while benefiting from her labor. Gregory looked at Ethan. Ethan looked scared. They refused to settle, so we went to trial. The judge was Honorable Judge Elena Morales, a woman with sharp eyes and zero patience for nonsense. Dana played the recordings, one by one. Ethan's voice filled the courtroom. It's only fair. I'm higher value. You should compensate me. That's what hazard pay is. Judge Morales' expression darkened with each clip. At one point, she stopped the playback. Mr. Price, she said, are you actually arguing that your wife should have paid you to remain married to her? Ethan swallowed. It was a metaphor. A metaphor, she repeated, with dollar amounts and payment schedules? Silence. Gregory tried to redirect, talked about Ethan's higher income, his ambition, his sacrifices. Judge Morales shut him down. Higher income does not equate to higher value in a marriage, she said sharply. Marriage is a partnership, not a marketplace. She turned back to Ethan. You benefited from your wife's labor while demeaning it. You labeled stability as inferiority. That is not growth. That is entitlement. Ethan tried to blame Brianna. She influenced me. The judge cut him off. You're an adult, she said. Own your choices. The ruling came an hour later. Both parties would retain their retirement accounts. The house would be sold, proceeds split evenly. Ethan would pay $200 per month in spousal support for 5 years. Ethan gasped. Judge Morales didn't smile. That amount, she said evenly, is identical to the compensation you demanded from your wife. The court finds it appropriate that you now experience the impact of your own reasoning. She also ordered Ethan to pay 40% of my legal fees for prolonging the case with frivolous claims. After court, Ethan caught me in the parking lot. Leilani, we can appeal, he said, voice cracking. This is insane. I looked at him calmly. Your hazard pay is due on the 1st of the month, I said. His face collapsed. I didn't mean it, he whispered. I was confused. You were convinced, I replied. There's a difference. I walked away, and for the first time in years, I slept without dread. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. No fireworks, no dramatic speeches. Just signatures, stamped paper, and the quiet click of a door closing. Ethan paid the first alimony check on time. The second one, too. He tried to have his lawyer file for a modification, claimed the amount was punitive and emotionally motivated. Judge Morales denied it without a hearing, noting that the amount was based on Ethan's own stated valuation of relationship imbalance. That line made it into the written ruling. I framed it, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted a reminder that reality doesn't bend to arrogance. Word spread fast once the recordings became part of the public record. Friends who had been unsure stopped calling Ethan. His parents went quiet. A few mutuals reached out to apologize for believing his version. One message stuck with me. I didn't realize how much you carried until it was written down. Neither did Ethan. Brianna's downfall came quietly. And then all at once, HR complaints surfaced. Multiple employees, men and women, reported her coaching sessions. She'd been rating coworkers, pushing ideology, creating a hostile environment under the guise of optimization. Ethan wasn't named directly, but the timing wasn't subtle. She was fired a month later. Last I heard, she was selling supplements online and rebranding herself as a performance consultant. Her podcast still existed. It had dozens of followers, mostly bots. Ethan tried to apologize again, this time by email. He wrote about confusion, about influence, about how he'd lost sight of what mattered. I didn't reply, because apologies don't erase entitlement. They just arrive after it fails. Ethan started dating someone new almost immediately, a woman who posted pictures of luxury brunches and talked about crypto like it was religion. They looked happy online. I muted them. Not out of bitterness, out of peace. As for me, I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment downtown. Light-filled, quiet, mine. Charlie adjusted immediately. He claimed the couch like he'd always lived there. I still wake up at 6. I still plan my groceries. Still cook. Still save. Still boring, and I've never been happier. Because here's what I learned the hard way. Stability isn't weakness. Care isn't a discount. And anyone who asks you to pay for the privilege of being loved never loved you at all. Ethan didn't fall out of love with me. He just mistook being supported for being superior. Now every month, on the 1st, he sends me $200. A reminder, a receipt, a consequence.